Hey ambitious dentist, welcome to Start Your Dental Practice, the show for existing and aspiring dentists to take your dental practice to the highest possible level. I'm your host, Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV, founder of dentistmetrics.com. In every episode, we aim to demystify the how to start a dental practice problem by bringing on world-class dentists, influencers, and consultants in the dental industry to pick their brain about how to get past the barriers involved from going from no practice to being a practice owner to owning your own successful dental practice.
So guys, just about anyone can grow a successful dental practice with the right strategy, attitude, and a little bit of luck. I really honestly believe that. But being a dentist is about more than just padding your pockets. It's about service, it's about community, it's about making a difference while also building a life of financial freedom. No one starts their dental practice wanting to just get by, but unfortunately, that's exactly where many practices end up. And I want to help change that. Of course, everyone has different metrics of success, but at the end of the day, you want to make a difference while being financially free, which is why I'm so excited to have Dr. Christopher Phelps back on the show. You might remember him from episode 6 almost 2 years ago. Now, not only is he an incredibly successful dental practice owner, he is truly one of the good guys inside of the dental space. So, Dr. Chris is the owner of Carolina's Dental Center of Matthews, founder of Call Tracker ROI, as well as Golden Goose Scheduling. And since we last talked, he's continued to grow his practices and give back to the community. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation today. So, here's what some of you are going to learn. How to reduce no-shows and increase your revenues virtually overnight. Dr. Chris's best tips and tricks for effectively managing a high-performing team. How to ethically persuade your patients and team. Why Dr. Chris's started Golden Goose Scheduling. The biggest challenges dentists face when scheduling, as well as how to overcome them. How to do more with less and why it's important for your practice, as well as a whole lot more. And so at the end of the episode, you'll also hear how to get a special bonus you really don't want to miss. If this bonus is probably going to be one of my favorite ones because it is how to use the powers of persuasion to get people to say yes, implant cases. Now, it's how to do it specifically for implant cases, but I want you guys to realize even if you don't do implants, the same tactics can be used on other types of services. So be sure to listen all the way to the end of the episode to find out how to get access to that. Now, here's my interview with Dr. Christopher Phelps.
Hey guys, sorry for the interruption. Really quick announcement for you. And if you're going to be a dental practice owner, you know you're at some point going to have to get a dental practice loan, whether it's going to be to acquire a dental practice or it's going to be to start a startup dental practice. You're going to have to get a loan. And I'm really proud to say that a company that I've worked with personally dozens of times over the past few years is our first sponsor after 80 episodes of Start Your Dental Practice. And our first sponsor is Bank of America Practice Solutions. So whenever you're going to be getting a new loan, whenever you're going to get a loan for starting your dental practice or acquiring a dental practice, you really want to make sure that you have 3 things when it comes to that loan. Number 1, you want a really great interest rate. Number 2, you want to make sure that the company that you're speaking with has a lot of experience and can guide you through the best path to be able to become a practice owner through the loan process. And number 3, you want to make sure that the terms associated with that loan are the most advantageous for you. And I'm really happy to say that all 3 of these things, Bank of America just knocks it out of the park for you. And they've got some really great new promotions that I'm not even sure if one of these that they've even announced anywhere else other than what I'm about to say to you on the Start Your Dental Practice podcast. So, SYDPers, here is the announcement for this. So, number 1, interest rates. They've got a couple of really great promotions. The first one is on new acquisitions. The first year of that loan, 1.89% for a dental practice acquisition right now in the first year. That's crazy low. You never even hear of loans dipping below 3%. Nonetheless, less than 2% on that first year. And then after the first year, it's still super competitive compared to everybody else out there because Bank of America always comes in as either the lowest interest rate or one of the lowest interest rates of any banks that are out there. So that's the first part of that. Again, you want to make sure you have a great interest rate. Number two, you want to make sure that the company you're working with has a lot of dental practice experience. I don't know if any company out there in the world has more dental practice loan financing experience than Bank of America does. They're fantastic at it. Their reps are really good. And they're going to be able to tell you if the deal is going to be able to get done or if it's not going to be able to get done. So they don't waste your time at all, and they can help you understand the different nuances throughout that process. Fantastic. The third piece of this is that the best terms. So here's the really cool part. A lot of people don't realize this, but whenever you are buying a practice or starting a practice up, most banks, if not, 90% of them out there, require that you have disability insurance as well as life insurance to cover the payments for that loan, as well as to cover the total value of those loans. This goes up and down quite a bit for different types of loan sizes, as well as different risk profiles for the person receiving the loans. But let's call it $600 a month for those insurance rates. Very, kind of middle of the line for you. $600 a month you have to pay in addition to the loan to be able to have those insurances funded, to be able to have that policy, to have that loan. Bank of America is getting rid of that completely. So you do not have to have that. If you think about that $600 a month, that's $7,200 a year. Over 10 years, that's $72,000 you're going to save by going with Bank of America Practice Solutions. It's really no brainer. If you're going to have to get a loan, which you are going to have to do 100%, you may as well go with a company that has great interest rates, has great experience with the industry, and has the best terms out there in the market today. So if you're currently in the process of shopping loans, 100% give Bank of America Practice Solutions a try. And if you would mention that you came through the SYDP community, it would help out the podcast a lot and also allow us to give back to our very gracious sponsors. Again, this is an advertisement, a paid advertisement. If you go to them, I will, have more advertising revenue come to me. So if you enjoy the podcast, I would appreciate you helping out our sponsors. And if you are interested in that loan process, just text the word bank loan, one word, BANKLOAN, to 33444. Again, that's bank loan to 33444, and we will reach out to you. Thanks, guys.
Hello, ambitious dentist. Today, I have the esteemed pleasure to have on a repeat guest who was actually the number 6 episode of Start Your Dental Practice. He was the guest on the 6th episode. We've come a long way since episode number 6. There's a statistic that something like 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 10. And so since we are going to be recording this one as episode, I believe, number 82, we've went way far and beyond that 10 episode threshold for so many different podcasts. And the reason that we've been able to do it is because we've had such fantastic guests in that first 10 episode span, such as Dr. Chris Phelps, who is my guest today. If you're not familiar with Dr. Chris Phelps, he is a resource to the dental community and is one of my favorite people in dentistry, just because he does so much and he does everything so well. And at the same time, he gives so much back to the community. So again, if you're not familiar with him, here's just a list of the things. I'm probably going to leave one of these off. Here's just a list of the different things that Dr. Phelps has going on with him. He is the founder of Call Tracker ROI, which is a fantastic call tracking software for dental practices. He's the founder of the Carolinas Dental Center of Matthews, which is a mega successful dental practice in which he's, and this is just his current dental practice. He's also built multiple practices up to multiple millions of dollars in revenue in multiple locations. He's then sold them and built other ones up as well. He is also the host, the Principles of Persuasion workshop for dentistry. He is like a ninja black belt at the Cialdini Centers of Influence. I know, or Cialdini, I have no idea how to pronounce his name. And he's also, just again, a really great resource and someone I'm really happy to say is a friend. He's
frankly, are a great person to sit down and have a beer with as well on occasion whenever you're at conferences in Nashville, apparently. So, and he's on here today to help talk to us about, tell more of his story, as well as talk about his newest venture, which I'm really excited about. As soon as I heard about it, I said, we got to get you on the podcast to talk about this, because this is something that dentists absolutely need to have. And that newest venture is Golden Goose Scheduling, which is a resource for practices to be able to do, help with scheduling. So, what did I leave out of that? That probably is the longest intro I think I've done in 82 episodes, by the way. So, what did I leave out? I'm sure there was something.
Just my book that's on Amazon. Grow your dental membership plan, and how to start your own in-house savings plan. I call mine a dental savings plan, and go after a better quality pay insurance rat race.
Yeah, and that was almost I think that's what we talked about almost the entire time on the episode number 6. So obviously I'd forget that one. So tell us about what has gone on since that episode 6. Which was at this point probably almost 2 years ago at this point. So what's been going on in your work? I know you've been speaking a lot and talking to people about the things that are going on with your practices and ways you've seen successes happen and occur over the practices throughout the country.
Yeah, well, a lot, as you can imagine, has been going on. Even in my own practices, I think when we last talked, I had 2 at the time. So going back in time, I started out in a little practice that was doing about $600,000 a year, grew that to $6.5 million and 4 locations over about a 7-year period. So kind of really started out my career in dentistry on fire, and really growing for growth's sake. And then kind of rechanged my mindset and focus on, instead of growing for growth's sake, maximizing the capacity of the offices I had. Instead of having a lot of $1 million practices, what if I could spend my time, effort, and energy and focus on smaller numbers, less headaches, and just do more with what I have? And so I'd sold 2 of those that were doing about 1.6 million together when I took them over. And then within 3 years had offices doing 6 million in total. Just sold one of those about 1.5 years ago. So now I'm down to 1 office, and I'm trying to get that $3 million office, my office now, to 6 million. And I've got a plan to do that. So trying to do with 1 office what I used to do with 4. It's kind of been my challenge and my goal, just really maximizing that capacity. And, going to these retirement communities and doing my wine and cheese events and educational seminars, promoting the dental savings plan has been a passion of mine. And just really realizing a niche need there for those of us that want to try to escape the corporate storm or looking for a different practice model or a way to diversify our holdings, and going to these retirement communities and building many offices on site at their communities, and then having various associates and dentists and partners rotate around, and building a radius of mini offices around my main office. And in essence, if my market are these active independent living retirees, well, I'm going to go to the source, right? And I'm going to cut my market off at the pass. So it doesn't matter what corporate groups do around me or my other colleagues, my patients aren't going to go anywhere, right? Because I'm on site. I'm bringing the convenience of dentistry to them. And I think I can grow those, multiples of those, for a fraction of the cost of starting up or buying practices, and better systems for the long. So that's been kind of a passion and a project I've been working on, in my spare time as well.
Which you have just a bounty full of, I'm sure, as plenty of free time, right?
Yeah.
So much free time. Yeah, totally makes sense. Like that'd be like if a pediatric dentist could take up shop in a school. I mean, like it made a lot of sense, right? So very interesting. So you just mentioned something that like is you said it in just like so nonchalantly that it's something that so many practice owners just don't get, like that growth of how to take a practice and go from one point and then go to another. And you said in there, I have a plan. I'm going to maximize capacity, which are 2 things that I find a lot of dental practice owners don't have any. They don't know where to start with those types of things. So like, what is the how do you seemingly effortlessly build these practices up like this? Because like you said, you've got a ton of things going on, but at the same time, you're able to balance doing all those other things as well as grow these practices. So what do you think is missing from so many people's
repertoire to be able to do that?
Yeah, well, for me, it really comes from understanding what I consider the 5 most important metrics that I need to track in my office.
Mm-hmm.
And then really going into and not looking at these dashboards nowadays that have like 50 different metrics on there,
Mm-hmm.
which are great, but there's some science to choice that says that number one, people need a choice, but number two, the more choices you give them, the less likely they are to pick anything,
Mm-hmm.
mostly because you just gave them too many choices, right?
Sure.
And the uncertainty that produces. So I feel like the more data we get, we can't really differentiate what's really important, right? What are the real drivers? For me, picking 5 of those things and then really digging into the why and what defines, the variables of that equation, if you will, what drives those data points, and then trying to focus on a goal every quarter to move each of my dials one notch in a positive direction in some way, shape, or form. And so strategically thinking of it that way, working on my drivers, getting my dials to move in a positive direction, but only a certain number, focusing on getting a better quality new patient, really understanding my marketing and knowing, I'm only going to spend money where I'm going to get money back. So marketing for me is an investment. It's more of a science than a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you do that, right? With tracking and better scheduling. Once you master that and you can get any number of new patients in the door that you need, the right quality, well, then the rest starts to become using the science of influence and the strategies I've created to set the stage for better case acceptance, for more people to say yes to us, for people to actually show up for their appointment instead of no showing on us all the time, is huge. A way to get more revenue, right? We get more people in, more people say yes, better things happen strategically. Your dials start to move a whole lot easier. And then last but not least, are probably the number one issue I find in my office and everyone's office is trying to figure out this crazy thing we call our team. How do we deal with these people we work with? These our staff members, our team members, et cetera, and get them to work together and try to empower them to be little CEOs of their departments instead of just showing up for a paycheck. So those are the kind of things when I have a plan is I strategically try to work on each of those areas in some way, shape, or form. And it's been a process. It's definitely not been an overnight thing. But once you start getting the new patients in the door, for me, that's where it always started. That was the catalyst for growth. And then I just reinvested that revenue back in figuring out how to fix my team and then figuring out the influence stuff to set the stage for more yeses.
So you talked about the 5 metrics that you keep up with. Are those fluid and dynamic? Do they change every quarter, or is this a 5 set, completely?
Yeah, for me, they're set, but for everyone, I think they're different. And they're what's important to you when you look at, say, your 20 top key indicator points that somebody might put in for a consultant or whatever. So example for me, mine are production and collections. Obviously, it's new patient number. And it's open chair time, because that's one of the things people don't factor in or look at. Your chair costs you whether somebody's sitting in it or not, even in the hours that you're in. How much is open chair time and that potential lost opportunity costing you? That's part of my plan to get from 3 million to 6 million is, I start with the end in mind. If I were to do 6 million a year, well, I could potentially be open 6 days a week, 12-hour days. So 50 weeks a year, reverse engineer, right? What does that mean? And I figured out that if I can collect $200 per chair per hour that the office is open, 6 days a week, 12-hour days, 50 weeks a year, I can hit 6 million. And based on my current numbers, even with my open chair time, I think we're collecting $300 to $400 per hour per chair. So I feel like it's a very attainable goal. That's how we really maximize that capacity. And that's how I can say those kind of things, because that's the metric I'm following, tracking that open chair time as well as an example. So again, finding those little data points and then really digging into the why behind what drives them is key. And then focusing on a little bit every quarter. Let's try to do something this quarter to make that thing move.
Makes a lot of sense. And whenever you start reverse engineering like that, like you said, you get down to the $300-$400 an hour per operatory currently. It starts thinking like, well, how do we replicate that, and how do we make that happen in the other chairs? And how do what does $300 or $400 an hour look like? Do we need to have? Okay, we need to have this many crowns per day, or we need to have this many big cases per day. We have to have this or that per day in order to be able to hit those goals. And so, yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. And then so you said every quarter you have a different focus. It sounds very much like kind of like the Rockefeller habits a bit of, going in or even like Kaizen optimization of where you're going in every quarter and trying to refocus and re-effort of the, focusing on attacking one thing at a time to make that thing over the quarter, which is every time I tell people about, using strategic management, I say, go look at Kaizen. Like that's like kind of the to me is one of the best strategies involved in doing improvement. So we're probably just lost about 90% of the people listening in saying, what is Kaizen? But, in strategic management and things like that. But so we'll pull back from that for a second. I'll be a little bit more specific. So I find a lot of practice owners, when they look at capacity in terms of, I am so busy right now because I'm tired every day after I get done working. And I am capped out at $1 million a year in collections. I'm doing 700,000. My hygiene team's doing 300,000, and I'm working out of 2 chairs, and they're working out of 3. I don't know how to go from $700,000 in my personal production time to go to 1.2 million in my personal production time. How does that happen? I mean, how does that happen, and how do you help associates do more money per month effectively in production?
Yeah, well, yeah. When I was practicing a good bit, I'm usually practicing at least 1 day a week now, but in my heyday, if you will, I was doing probably 1.2 million myself just off 3 days a week in hardcore production. But it was focusing on bigger cases, and doing sedation and implants and endo and doing ortho and, every year learning and trying to master a new procedure that was going to provide more options for my patients and bring in those bigger cases like that. Like doing bigger hybrid cases, 6 implants and screwing a denture. How do we do those kinds of things? Once I started adding those, then it suddenly became easier to do more working less as a result. And then eventually you come to a point where you realize you can only do so much, right? And this is the same thing with our associate. Too many people try to spend time forcing the associate to change or, trying to make somebody do what they don't want to do. And, the old adage, you can bring the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. They're only going to do what, instead of me trying to change them, I'm just going to build systems in spite of them, right? To build systems to help them get to where they want to get to. And then if it's not where their practice needs to be, that's fine. I'm just going to bring on more until the practice hits its goals.
And how does the system work around, having an associate produce more? Because, I get people all the time that will say, my associate just, they just don't do more production. They just don't, even though we try and have like a protocol around how we diagnose, it just doesn't seem to make any effect on this associate. Can you give me some of an example of a system you do to help associates, or even, that you've helped install into other practices for other dentists where they can up that production per hour?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I do is, this is what I focus on in my 2-day Principles of Persuasion workshop, is teaching them and your team how to come up with a plan with the patient, whether it's a single option for their treatment or even if there's multiple options. How do you present each of those scenarios? But then ultimately, if there's multiple options, how do you funnel them down into one plan, and that the patient has committed to multiple times along the way, so that there's confidence in that one plan, and how to teach your team how to then take it from there and present the financials in a way that it's going to set the stage for more people to say yes. So the doctor's really job is relegated to education, but education, the sequence of how you present matters, right? So how do you present these cases, and then how do you ultimately act to the patient to funnel them back down into that one plan? If you can do that, that alone is going to set the stage for better case acceptance for them. The team is better trained. That's the system in spite of them. It takes that out of their hands, and the team is better able to handle how to schedule these patients for you. When I look at how do I handle them, if they only want to do a certain amount of production, that's fine. But for me, it goes back to why I track open chair time. Because to me, it's all about the chairs. The chair is the chair is the chair. So if I have 4 hygiene chairs and 4 doctor chairs, if you will, I may have one associate who can work all 4 chairs and keep them busy and produce. I have some associates that can only work out of 2 chairs. And I got some associates, they will only work out of 1 chair. That's all they can keep full on a day-to-day basis. So if I can keep bringing in the patient load, which I don't have a problem on the new patient side, well, then for me, it's just about filling the chairs. So I may need, if I need 4 doctors there to fill those 4 chairs, then I'm going to have 4 there at the same time. That's the system in spite of them, right? They're only going to do what they're going to do, but nobody guarantees them 4 chairs, right? So let them build to their capacity and, help them and reinforce their strengths where you can. But at a point, you got to do what's best for the practice too.
That makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of doctors that, even talking about the open chair time, the opposite of that is whenever you have someone in the chair and the doctor's in there working and they're just, they swear they've got to have, 45 minutes to talk to the patient about, where their kids went to play soccer that day, or sure. Things that they're just eating away. And, again, I'm not advocating people, like, hey, how's it going? See you later. Like to go in and do that with patients. But there's some people that just prefer a lot more time with patients than others. And, whenever you think about, dollars per hour, you're at a disadvantage sometimes unless you are one of the people that can effectively communicate and get case acceptance on bigger cases, which I find really strangely, I find that there's a lot of dentists that aren't able to do that are of the 45-minute category of people that just sit and talk to people. Nothing against that. Fine, go ahead and do that if that's what you like to do. That's how you want to run your practice. But whenever you hit capacity, you're going to hit capacity faster if that's the way that you do. You communicate, I guess. And this is me opining on something that I don't do every day, obviously. But so, okay, so we've talked about case acceptance.
Yeah, exactly. I like to give them they can, like I said, I'm not going to change them. If they want 45 minutes to talk to that patient, by all means, please take the 45 minutes, build the relationship. That's all important. But at the same time, I can't have 3 chairs just sitting there empty because you're in that 1 chair for 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. If I can put other patients in those chairs, then I'm going to bring on other docs to fill them. So everybody is free to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, that's great. So we've talked about case acceptance, communication, how we present, give options, financial options, things like that. And obviously, and that's the thing that a lot of people feel like. I think, and part of this is because of the practice management software is not fantastic at showing you this information. But I feel like a lot of those numbers are the numbers that people just have no clue on. Of like, I have no idea how much I presented this month. I have no idea how much was accepted this month. If I have an idea of that, then I definitely don't know why people said no to anything. Like, I don't know if it was a financial thing. I don't know if it was a time thing, or if it was a fear thing, or if it was that I didn't trust you or anything like that. But it's just hard to track that sometimes manually for some people. But I see what you're saying. You create a system around that to where it's just automated effectively of, do this, do that, do this, do that. And then we're going to be able to figure out how to make sure that we're getting as much acceptance as possible and getting paid for that as well, to where the numbers start rising and you get that better dollar per hour. Is that an effective summary of that?
Yep, pretty much.
Okay, so let's move it back then. So we've got financial acceptance, treatment acceptance, and then we've got, before that, we've got to get somebody. You talked about scheduling, about being effective and the actual scheduling of the time, of making sure that there's someone in the chairs. Let's talk about the step before that, and let's talk about getting that person into the practice. Getting the new patients in. You talked about some of the marketing that you do of going in and setting up the kind of the little mini satellite offices and different retirement centers and places around the practices. But as far as the other new patient aspect of that, how do you go about that? Is that the way do you find the biggest return on your dollars right now, or are there other things that you're doing as well?
Well, that's what I call grassroots marketing. Anytime you can go to these communities or put yourself in front of your market, who you want more of, you're telling your message to a small group of people. And then if they like your message, they're going to spread to the masses in that community on your behalf. That to me is kind of what I wrote the book on as well, with the wine and cheese events. But it's the most effective use of your dollars It costs very little, but goes a long way if you understand how to do it. Obviously, you got your internal marketing referrals and whatnot, are the another inexpensive way. But ultimately, everyone needs to do some external marketing. I don't care who you are. So then the idea becomes, well, let's make sure that we're tracking that well. And so there's two sides of the marketing coin, right? Are the advertisements we're paying these advertisers good money for, giving us enough quantity, but more importantly, quality of new who spend enough in our office to justify the expense of what it took to get them? Or is it our team not answering the telephone from these new patient calls and not converting those calls into appointments? Or is it both?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the situation I found myself in when I was, I took over my two least performing, highest debt practices. So I was spending $36,000 a month in marketing to get 60 patients for my efforts, 30 at one office and 30 at the other. And so I knew I had to figure that out, where my problem was, real quick. And I looked at every tracking program out there, and nobody had what we needed. It really wasn't adapted for dentistry. And so that's what I felt like I had to innovate and create for myself. And, I found out through that we didn't even answer 20 potential new patient phone calls a month.
How many was that? How many potential?
220. We didn't answer.
Significant.
If we did answer, we only converted 24% of those into appointments. And so I knew in my case, it wasn't the advertisements not bringing in the leads. Man, we couldn't answer the phone and we couldn't convert. So I spent a lot of time listening to those phone calls and kind of reverse engineering the phone training, kind of listening and hearing the barriers that patients were putting up on the phone and our team members were putting up on the phone, and trying to create some strategies around that. And as a result, my teams went from 24% conversions to 86% conversions in a very short amount of time. So that was a huge fix to the problem. But ultimately, as I think 300 new patients a month between the two practices within like 3 months. So again, a great catalyst for growth. But ultimately, back to this missed call issue that I see, it's kind of like the plague that's plaguing dentistry right now. It's an epidemic, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody really understands it. Every office we track, I see it. If you're spending any money in marketing, you're not answering the majority of your new patient phone calls. Sometimes it's a third, sometimes it's over half. Okay, and that's a lot. And it's costing everybody, 10, 20, 30 new patients a month sometimes. And the truth is, it happens because of reasons that are beyond your control. And, think about the front desk team. At any given time, they're verifying insurance benefits, or they're on hold for 30 minutes, or they're confirming appointments for future appointments. They're who's trying to check out and pay money and make their next appointment while they're standing in front of them. And then when you factor that in, and what I've figured out is that at any given time, if you're an established practice, there are 4 existing patients trying to call in for your 2 phone lines, right? Your 2 phones sit at the front desk. And then there's a new patient call trying to get in as well. So the new patient call only has a 1 in 5 chance of even being answered between the 2 team members. And so you find out real quick why it's not their fault and why we can't handle the situation. And I found that even with some small changes I made in my practice, like, we were closed during lunch hours, and I found out the data showed I was missing calls during lunch. So I started staggering the team so we answered during lunch. And suddenly the new patient numbers went up, right? Once you get past those small changes, you're going to find that you're still not going to be able to handle the capacity of calls coming in. So that's why I felt like I had to create the scheduling center. I'd looked at call centers out there, and I felt like the call center concept was an answer, but I tracked all of them through my various clients who were using their services. So that's kind of what's nice about the call tracker program, is I got a sneak peek into many of these call center services. And I realized the problem is they're not answering our phone calls with new patients, and they convert worse in our teams. So they're really not answering or solving the problem. So I don't want somebody to answer my calls. I want somebody to schedule my appointments and make the new patient appointment calls into appointments. So that's why I felt like Golden Goose scheduling was needed and would be a benefit to people, myself included. And so far, we've been proving that with what we're getting with our clients.
I love that you scratched your own itch yet again. I mean, you scratched your own itch with the call tracker system of being able to have an effective way to be able to monitor the activity on the phones, marketing results, successes, as well as the, getting a way to make sure that you are able to capitalize on all those phone calls rather than only a 20 to 30% of that. So that's great. So, and I can see how the data would be just invaluable of figuring out, what your benchmark is that you'd have to know how to beat. And with your systems driven mind, I know that that's got to be, you probably have that down to a science at this point. So basically what you're saying is that you are now in the Golden Goose Scheduling Center are effectively replicating your team to allow other practices to use your team to answer the phones for them whenever they can't get a hold of their phones. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I've trained my team in the science of influence and persuasion. I trained them in my telephone language program and how to identify the barriers patients put up and create strategies to get them over those barriers and get them into our practice. And my facet was, again, the way I work is I don't go looking for problems, but when I find one or if I'm in one, I can't shake it until I really figure it out. And if somebody had the answer, like if there was a call center out there that was worth a damn, you know what, I'd have paid for it. I don't like to reinvent the wheel. But when I see that they're kind of giving us the half truth, but they're not fixing the problem, especially for what I needed, then I feel like I got to figure it out, and I won't stop until I do. So my facet with the scheduling center was that I want to make sure we answered 100% of the new patient calls that come in from marketing sources. I mean, good Lord, we're paying for them. Why can't we answer them? So let's answer 100% of them. Number two, the way I trained my team was I wanted to make sure they would schedule the appointments as good, if not better, than your team. And so far, 35 plus clients we've got since we started the service, we're scheduling better than every one of their team members, right? And that was one of my missions. And if we don't schedule the appointment, we review 100% of those calls with my team so they can learn faster for you. So my goal was it's almost like having 2 extra front desk members handling your calls, but without you having to pay the overhead of 2 extra people, and then goal mostly get you the more new patients for what you're spending your money on. One of our clients, he was getting 9 new patients for his $5,000 a month in marketing that he spent in direct mail and other things. And it was because his team didn't answer 55% of the phone calls that came in, and they only converted 37.5% of the ones they did answer and talk to. So, and the first, yeah, it's terrible. So you figure, the first month we took over his phones, we got him 32 new patients, okay, instead of 9. Within 3 months, because we reviewed in every one of those calls that we didn't schedule for him, we are now scheduling him like 61 new patients a month, right? Same $5,000 a month spent, but now he's getting 61 people instead of 9. Okay, that's a big difference, right? And a lot of lost opportunity there that we were able to tap into for him. So, and now he's been able to grow, and here we are almost 8 months later. He's been on the service, and now he's opening up a 3rd office because of it. Because now he's got that one's covered. The growth is handled, So now he feels like he can move on.
So I like to try and take the role of the listener sometimes when we're talking about these types of things. And I know what the typical objections of discussing outsourcing your phone calls are, the fears that are part of that. And the first one that I always get from people whenever I approach this subject of like, why are we not answering the phones, is or utilizing someone else to answer the phones, is because they're afraid to have somebody that they have a patient of theirs call and not get somebody on the other line that they know who is. Obviously, you're not finding that to be an issue. Is that accurate?
Yeah, correct. Because again, we're focusing on the new patient phone calls. Yeah, the existing patient phone calls are still going to the office like normal, but now the team has more time to handle those phone calls. And you know what the good thing about an existing patient, if you don't answer the phone for one reason, guess what they're going to do? They're going to call you back, right? The new patient, on the other hand, who has no experience with you, if you don't answer for some reason, they are gone. You've lost them, right? That's what I wanted to focus on. Let us handle the new ones, because nobody knows how to talk to them better than we do for your team. And of every practice model, right? We've got clients in Canada, all over the U.S., fee for service, PPO, even a couple of Medicaid offices using the service. It doesn't matter.
So how many, as far as, and so the other piece of that for the new patients, the fear that I've heard other doctors say is that the new patient will call in, they'll talk to Sam, and whenever they come into the practice, they'll say, hey, I talked to Sam, and Sam won't be there. Like for some reason, they rationalize that that's a negative on the practice. Have you heard anything of that happening, or any type of pushback from that?
Definitely not. And in fact, if your new patient shows up and can actually remember the name of anyone on your front desk team, whether they talk to him or not, I'll give you $100. It just doesn't. I mean, it never happens. It's just not the norm, right? Is there going to be 1 out of 1,000? Sure. Give away the 1,000 because of it? No. You know, all they want to know is they're calling because they want an appointment, right? They don't care who gives them the appointment. Just drop the barriers and let's make the appointment. And then once they're in there, your team can take it from there. You know, we always hand over the appointments as soon as they're made to the front desk team, so they can call them immediately and reach out and say hello and introduce themselves personally. Hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you. Or they can email them directly, you know, and send them a welcome packet. So they have a chance to communicate with them on that kind of level, if that's the level of service they provide people. But no, you know, it was funny. You know, we have our clients in Canada they would swear to us up and down that no one in the States could book their appointments because our patients know that you're not from Canada. So they don't want to talk to somebody that's not in Canada. And I was like, okay, well, I appreciate your opinion, but let's see what the data shows. And so we tried it. And so far we've got like 8 offices in Canada. And you know what? We're 100% conversions in Canada. So what does that tell you? They don't care.
They want their needs serviced. They don't really
That's
care
it.
who it is that's helping them get to that point, right? As long as they're being taken care of, and who cares? So what about as far as, so, and again, I'm trying to just rationalize through what someone that might be listening might be saying, but they might say, well, I accept 50% PPO, and every time we get a new patient coming in, they always ask, do we accept this insurance? How does your team know if what to say?
Well, we have a detailed questionnaire that all of our clients have to answer, so we get a better idea of how your office wants it done, right? How it wants it scheduled. And then I try to train people on my phone language with how to handle this insurance question. Do you take or accept my insurance? And if you're like me, my offices are out of network, right? But I accept the assignment of benefit. So I estimate what the insurance will pay me as an out-of-network provider, and I will file that for the patient as a courtesy, and I wait on the check from the insurance company, and I just collect the difference from them. Well, you know, when it comes to a preventative stuff like cleanings and stuff, even out of network, 90% of the insurance companies we deal with pay me 100% of my fee, right? So does it really matter? You know, if they say, well, how much you do take my insurance? Well, yeah. How much is it going to cost me? Well, most of the time, nothing. Okay. What it really tells me is that these people that have issues with saying, do you take or accept my insurance? And you tell them you do in network. Okay. They're 2 very different people. The person who asked, do you take or accept my insurance, is not the same patient as, are you in network with my insurance specifically? The problem is our team hears them as the same thing, but they're 2 very different people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll start with the patient who says, are you in network with my insurance? Okay, their mindset has already been set. They've made a commitment, going back to the influence stuff, that they think they need to go to someplace in network. So there's nothing you're going to be able to tell them on the phone that's going to change that mindset. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we just tell them straight up, no, I'm sorry, we're not. But you know what? We have hundreds of patients just like you that choose us anyway. And believe it or not, many times we'll get people to schedule. Now it's only probably like a third of the time, but you know what? At least we told them and they know what to expect when they get there. So there's no issue. So probably 2/3 of those you're not going to get. But this patient who says, do you take or accept my insurance, on the other hand, I'm going to tell you 90% of the time, the insurance is not an issue for that patient, and they have no idea what it means in your practice or any practice. It's not a barrier, but it's our teams are the ones that are making it the barrier for them. And the reason I know it's not an issue and they don't understand what their insurance is the way our team answers the question. So the patient will say, do you take or accept my insurance? And we're not in network. And you know what the patient says? Because I listen to thousands of these phone calls. I've got them. You know what they say? They say, well, what does that mean? I can't come there? And they're like, nope, sorry. Call your insurance company. Thanks. Click. Right? You hear these patients patients and they're so confused. Like, what do you mean? I want to come there and I can't come. Of course you could come here, but the team hears them and thinks they're a different person. So they're putting up that barrier and pre-screening them out of your practice. When the reality is, if you just had a better system to handle the 10% of the people that it might be an issue for that you're out of network, suddenly you can have all of them. So the idea is if 90% is not an issue, we tell them, sure, yeah, come on in. Once you book the appointment, right, it's up to your team to verify the insurance. My team knows, and we try to educate people, that if you see that this insurance company, for whatever reason, is not going to pay you well, like they're only going to pay 50% of your hygiene appointment or nothing, right, because you're out of network. Well, in that case, step number one is you cannot let that patient show up in your practice, or that's going to be a problem. So we have to get here and say, hey, guess what? I was checking out your insurance company, and unfortunately, the way your insurance works in our office is it doesn't work. We got to put the onus back on who's responsible, the insurance company. Okay. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, it doesn't work with us. It sucks. I'm sorry. But if you came to see us, you'd have to pay at least 50% of your cleaning fee, which was, or whatever it is. Now, look, we have hundreds of patients just like you that choose us anyway. But I know for some people, this could be an issue. Do you want to keep your appointment? And you give them a choice. If they say, yes, I'm still coming, well, guess what? Now they've committed. They know that you're out of network, and they know they're going to have to pay. And they said yes to it. If they say they got to go someplace else, okay, that's fine. But hey, if your situation ever changes, you know what? We'd love to have you back here. And you always welcome them back because they're going to go have a crappy experience, and they're going to remember how nice you were to them and want to try something else. But again, they know to play ball in your practice, they're going to have to pay. If for some reason, worst case scenario, they slip through the cracks and they actually show up at your practice and you don't realize it until they're there, right? Money might be an issue for them, okay? And if they know what do you mean I got to pay $100 out of pocket, right? How do you handle that? So my team is trained to know that money is the issue for that person in the moment. And again, this is only going to happen in hygiene, right? You're not going to bring somebody in like this for a crown. Mm-hmm. So for hygiene, I tell them, look, if money is the problem, get rid of the problem. We're at a network. What do I care? Write it off, but make it a gift using reciprocity principle. I tell you what, Ms. Jones, we totally understand the confusion, our mistake. As a gift from us, we're going to go ahead and waive that $100 fee you would normally owe. We'll follow your insurance and take whatever they'll pay us. We're going to waive that $100 as a gift from us. But just know that the way your insurance works in our practice is it doesn't work. I'm sorry about that, but it sucks. Okay. But if you choose, we'd love to keep your appointment for recall you got scheduled, but we understand if that $100 every time you come in is going to be a problem, we understand you may want to go elsewhere. So what do you want to do? Do you want to keep this appointment or do you need to go elsewhere? And give them a choice. There's a lot of power when we give people choices like that, right? And they really make real commitments. Yeah. But again, if they say yes, then they bought in and committed to, they know they're going to pay every time. They're going to play by your rules next time. If they say no and go elsewhere, well, you've anchored them to your experience, which hopefully was a good one. And when they go to the next office, it's probably not going to be a good experience. Many times I find we get those patients to come back. But again, they play by our rules. Okay.
I love that. Yeah.
So again, that's the answer to that question. And this way you don't pre-screen anyone out. You don't ignore the 9 patients for the 1 who could potentially be bad. When now you've got a plan for everyone.
That makes so much sense because of the fact that, like you said, that allows you to also focus more on the patient experience and realizing, developing a culture around, let's make sure that our patients have a fantastic, visit because whenever they leave, if it's for one of those money reasons and they go somewhere else that doesn't focus on the patient experience and the culture of the practice, then it's night and day. I mean, we all know, or I don't know if you have, but I'm sure you have because you've seen so many practices, but you see the practices that just treat it, just as a very cold service. It's not a welcoming service. It's not something that people typically enjoy going to visit. I mean, that's the reason, I personally switched to dental practice at one point in time was because it was just a terrible experience. And then I went to another practice and I was like, oh, this is fantastic. It feels like, I'm wanted to be here. People, they enjoy talking to me. I enjoy talking to the doctor. I enjoy talking to the staff. Yeah, I'm getting my teeth cleaned, or maybe I'm having some type of case done. But it was overall, I'll leave with a smile on my face. And so those are two very different practices that I was visiting. I think a lot of dentists don't forget to focus on that experience point too, which I'm sure we could talk another 3 hours about every little point of the things that we talked through today. So tell me, as far as, you've seen the stats, and you don't have to be, to the percentage, but on average, what is your assumption that practices miss new patient opportunities, as far as just across the board average? Again, average is, in the middle, or, the middle of the numbers. There's a high and a low.
Yeah, based on the data I'm seeing, they're not answering 46% of their potential new patient calls. These are from ad sources, right? These are from marketing sources you paid for the phone to ring, and you're not able to answer. They go to voicemail, they get a busy signal, it just rings and rings, and the caller hangs up. So 46% is the average. And the more you market, the more you spend on marketing, the worse it is. And then the conversions, as we all know, they're only converting on average 34% into appointments.
Is that 34% of all phone calls, or is that 34% of answered phone calls?
Of answered phone calls.
So on 40%, if 46% are not answered, that means 54% are answered. If you're converting 34% of 54%, that's something like 15 to 20% of all phone calls.
Pretty much.
So with Golden Goose scheduling, what are you currently seeing on the outsourcing of those phone calls? How do those numbers look for? And again, I'm asking you to be pretty transparent here. So if you
So we're across the board, we're answering 100% of the new patient phone calls from these advertising sources for our clients. And my team across the board is averaging 82% conversions. So not only are we answering all the phone calls, we're converting 82%.
So it's almost 4x
into appointment.
So
it's significant.
Yeah, almost 4 times what a typical practice will answer then. So if you then prescribe to some, if prescribe to some theory of what the value of a patient is, which, you could go down a really deep rabbit hole trying to figure that one out. But even if you assign something fairly nominal, like $1,000 per patient, the value, if you're 4xing the number of those that you get every month, just think about how much that would be worth to your practice. And I'm speaking to the listener here, not to you specifically. If you went from, we'll say 100 patient phone calls, because we'll keep the math easy, and you were converting 34%, 20% based off of the average that you spoke about. It's 20 patients versus 82%, which is what you're talking about. That's 82. Yep. So that's literally $62,000 a month in patient values if we're prescribing $1,000 difference. So a lot of value being given there. So the reason I wanted to bring you on again was because I'm a huge fan of the science of what you do, of this, you're a perfect meld of like psychology and game theory and persuasion and marketing and stats as well. So it's like the perfect mix of the things that I want to be able to talk to people about on this podcast. So I wanted to get people out there to be able to listen and say, hey, you've got a team that has been trained by you to be able to automate and outsource this outside of practices that have a big problem with this. And I will attest, I will say 100% the numbers that he is talking about are 100% accurate. I've seen it with client after client after client, story after story after story. And so big fan of it. Where can people go to learn more about the Scheduling Center?
They can go to the website, goldengoosescheduling.com. And if you remember the old story of the goose that laid the golden egg, it's kind of how we came up with the name. Every time I talk to a dentist, they're like, "Hey, what's that one marketing thing that can get me 100 more new patients this month?" And as we all know this, I can probably find you 5 things that can get you 20 patients each, but there's no one thing that'll get you 100. What I really show them is, Doc, if you could just answer your telephone calls and convert, you've already got the goose laying the golden egg of new patients. You just can't see the egg. And that's what we're trying to do, is tap into. Show them, here's your egg, man. You answer more calls and convert, and suddenly you've got all the new patients that the average practice needs, to hit whatever goals they want. So goldengoosescheduling.com is our website for that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. If there's anyone else that wants to reach out or anything like that, for whether it be because I know you have a Principles of Persuasion workshop for dentists coming up in the next month or so, or something like that. If they want to come in and learn a lot more about the persuasions in dentistry and things we talked about, do you want to give that a little bit of tell people how to learn a little bit more about that too?
Yeah. June 2nd and 3rd here in Charlotte. I've got one of 3 persuasion workshops I do per year. And the idea is I need 2 days. It's 14 hours of CE. So if you can bring yourself and as many of your team members as you can, I can make sure and influence them to implement these systems I've created. But I've taken Cialdini's behind them, and I'll teach you on what makes them tick, what activates, what amplifies them. But at the same time, I'm going to teach you the systems I've created on how to put them into action to decrease no-shows, to build more authority for our team members. So it's not just the expert doctor telling them they need treatment. They have another expert, the hygienist, instead of just a technician telling them, right? They have an authority instead telling them that they need this done. So how do we get more referrals? How do we get more Google reviews? And ultimately, how do we get more people to pay today? Make our marketing more effective. And most importantly, how do you set the stage for better case acceptance for every we could do in dentistry, whether it's a single procedure or it's the whole mouth of procedures, right? I'll walk you through the process on how to do that. And it's a step-by-step thing. So the people that are doing it are seeing some significant results immediately, which is kind of cool. So, and the website for that is guide, GUIDM, THEM, to yes. So TO and YES. So guide them to yes.com.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, I urge you to go to guidethemtoyes.com as well as goldengoosescheduling.com. Check it out, see what's going on. And if you would, reach out to Dr. Phelps and say thank you for coming on and being a friend of the podcast. He does a lot of really cool things in the industry. And if you haven't followed him before, you need to start following him, because he's really, really good at this stuff. So thanks again, Dr. Phelps, for coming on today. And I appreciate you doing the things that you do.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jonathan.
A very special thanks for Dr. Chris for coming back on the show. It's been great to see how much he's done in the past 2 years since we've last talked. And it just goes to show you, when you focus on the right things, you can see great success with your dental practice. So, as I said earlier, if you want to take a practice up to $6 million a year in revenue, you're going to have to learn some case acceptance skills. And if you want to hear how Dr. Christopher Phelps persuades his patients to accept his treatment plans and case acceptance for implants, that is today's bonus. It's a fantastic, simple to read, simple piece of information that will show you the different options he lays out to people and how he gets people to say yes to case acceptance. So if you're interested in that bonus, simply text the word practice to 33444. Again, that's practice to 33444, or visit startyourdentalpractice.com/bonus if you're outside of the US. You'll also receive updates on the latest episodes of Start Your Dental Practice, helpful tips for owning and running a practice, and promotional opportunities direct to your inbox.
So that's it for today's episode, but that doesn't mean that the learning and implementation have to stop there. I've created a free report called The 15 Numbers That Will Make or Break Your Dental Practice. This report has been downloaded over 1,000 times by dental professionals. So if you want your free copy of this report that's going to outline what the most important numbers are in any dental practice, And it also includes how to look at your numbers, how to set goals, has a whole slew of really important information that is the culmination of all of my experience as a dental CPA. Then just go to startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. That is startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. And so that's it for today, Ambitious Dentist. Again, I'm Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV. I'll see you next week with another world-class practice owner or consultant that will help you start your very own dental practice. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Start Your Dental Practice community. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor and go to startyourdentalpractice.com/iTunes to leave your honest feedback and review on iTunes. It's going to help me create a better experience, a better show, a better podcast for you, the ambitious dentist. Your feedback really does help, regardless if you like the show today or not. If you didn't like the show, let me know, because it's going to help me create a better show and podcast for you. Lastly, if you know of anybody that would benefit from today's episode and today's content, today's guest, please feel free to share with them on social media or through email.